With so many restrictions being placed on our day-to-day lives, we're spending more time online to interact with friends and family. And although, when using the internet, there may be things which we disagree on, most people are capable of remaining polite and civil. For example, a mate of mine is opposed to many of the restrictions and doesn't favour wearing a face covering, whereas I think the restrictions aren't harsh enough. And anyone who enters a shop without a face mask or a clearly displayed exemption card should be thrown face first into a combine harvester. However, my aforementioned friend and I are able to agree to disagree and can converse online without resorting to mudslinging. And there's a fundamental difference between someone who doesn't want to wear a face covering, so avoid situations where they're required, and the infantile arseholes who are constantly in the news having to be forcibly removed from shops, aircraft and public transport because they feel their rights are being impinged upon, and then cough on innocent bystanders. And if I were in charge of the laws of the land, then deliberately coughing on someone during a pandemic would be attempted murder. And there wouldn't be a problem with the lack of prison places because there's no shortage of combine harvesters. Yet, if you read the comment section on any news article published on social media, there's no shortage of people supporting the coughers and the people who act like screaming toddlers on public transport, and even the cretins who every weekend meet up during a pandemic in their thousands to protest about restrictions, which they see as government tyranny. Because we've just entered the world of the keyboard warriors. Curiously, the average keyboard warrior has a lot in common with the average conspiracy theorist. They'll both have a misguided and slightly rosy view of communism. They'll be poorly educated, paranoid, deluded, and have a deep-seated mistrust of any form of authority. Last weekend, the Metro ran a story about the usual moronic protests going on down in London. And in the comment section, a keyboard warrior, a fully paid up member of the Knights of QWERTY, posted a long, poorly written monologue with a link to a heavily edited video. The video showed police officers physically restraining some screaming numpty, and several people commented asking if she could post the video before it had been edited. And she responded by replying to each of them with a tirade of abuse. Maybe she didn't have the undoctored footage. But even if she did, a true keyboard warrior wouldn't have posted it, because that might have shown events leading up to the arrest, thus undermining her radical left viewpoint that we live in a police state. A term which has become commonly used by the kings and queens of the caps lock is sheeple, the implication being that anyone who follows the prescribed narrative is acting like a dumb animal. Or as one keyboard warrior put it, the public are a herd of sheep. And although technically it's okay to say a herd of sheep, the official terms for a group of sheep are a flock or a drove. I learned that at school when I was 4. And what's sheep like about following good advice? If there were a natural disaster, say an earthquake or a volcanic eruption, would the keyboard warriors get online and start commenting? Look at the sheeple, doing what the government shills in the so-called fire brigade tell them to, heading towards safety. Wake up, sheeple, bar, bar, bar. And in our current troubled climate, there's no shortage of titanic typists putting forth their unsubstantiated opinions. Why wear a mask? They aren't 100% effective. We all know that, but neither is wearing a seatbelt or a bulletproof vest. It's all about tipping the odds in your favour and reducing the risk. I'd like to go skydiving with one of these people, and as we were in freefall, I'd cut their parachute off their back and tell them, well, there's no point wearing a parachute, they're not 100% reliable. Although statistically, if they fell to their death, I'd be less likely to. Next, from the typewriter tap dancers, we have the self-proclaimed evolutionary biologists. Coronavirus is mostly harmless. Our immune systems have evolved to cope. There's a 99% recovery rate. Firstly, no one knows the long-term implications of COVID. And secondly, they seem to be implying that because they're fit and healthy, anyone with a compromised immune system deserves to die. I'd like to take these people scuba diving. And once we got to a sufficient depth, I'd turn their air supplies off. because there's oxygen in the water, and surely anyone so advanced would immediately evolve gills. Or failing that, just inject them with Ebola, because that has a 50 to 90% mortality rate. So let's see how advanced their immune systems are. Next up from the laptop legionnaires. Stop living in fear, sheeple. Seasonal flu kills more people than coronavirus. Firstly, that statistic, often quoted by keyboard warriors, is bollocks. In 2020, COVID-19 has killed far more people than flu. Secondly, we already have a vaccine for the flu. And thirdly, and most importantly, so fucking what? Annually, more people die of flu than were killed when the atom bomb was dropped on Hiroshima. Does that mean that the government should start detonating nuclear weapons on the off chance we build up herd immunity? And some of the people who were vaporised when the Enola Gay dropped her payload may have had underlying health conditions. So they probably shouldn't even be listed as nuclear deaths. That's what they fucking sound like. So how else do you spot a keyboard warrior in the comment sections? Well, again, like conspiracy theorists, they usually have appalling spelling and grammar. And I'm not picking on dyslexics. I'm dyslexic and I can spot those. No, these are the people who didn't pay attention at school, so they got no education and they're thick as shit. And in adulthood, they're desperately compensating and failing miserably. So let's have a look at a few examples of things written in anger by keyboard warriors. Originally, I screen grabbed these, but trying to stretch the text to fit on here just resulted in a blurry mess. So I'll have to retype it verbatim in such a way that my spell checker will have a nervous breakdown. You don't know anything. Not one word in that sentence is spelled correctly. Don't is nearly there, and no is correct for answering in the negative, but not no as in having accrued knowledge. Run along, sheep. Bar, bar, bar. So here, in effect, they're not calling me or any other contributor a sheep. They're saying, purchase a ewe of above average length, a long sheep, and enter it in some sort of distance event, like a marathon or a 5k fun run. And bar, bar, bar. That's not how to write the supposed noise that a sheep makes. That's the winning line on a fruit machine, a one-armed bandit, which I presume is the closest thing that the author of this comment got to an education. Can you say one-armed bandit anymore, or is that now offensive? I expect it's now differently abled individual living a life of crime due to failures in the benefit system. The other meanings of bar are a place serving alcohol or a length of cylindrical metal, neither of which seem to apply to an extended athletic sheep. But my favourite comes from a heated exchange on Facebook around a fortnight ago. And if you really want to piss off a keyboard warrior, correct their spelling errors. Because when they go off like a landmine, you can say that you support their argument and you were pointing out their errors so they could amend it and appear more professional. And that means I get to be an arsehole and they apologise. Or alternatively, antagonise them. Because they will respond angrily, usually with disastrous results, and that's what happened here. I was arguing with some keyboard nutjob who's an anti-masker who thinks 5G is a weapon. You know the type. And he wrote this. You're a grandma Nazi. A grandma Nazi, is that like Hermann Goering's nan? What I love about this is that at some point in the past, this individual has misheard the phrase grammar Nazi and is now using grandma Nazi in an attempt to take the intellectual high ground. And up until this point, I'd been very calm and polite, because if you see a thread running on social media with one of these ill-informed fuck nuggets constantly commenting, being calm and collected enrages them. Because at the other end of the conversation, there's a keyboard warrior fuming, drenched in sweat, stinking of BO, frantically wiping their forehead with tissues covered in their own jizz or the knickers that they stole off the neighbour's washing line. So I stopped being polite and typed, "Do you mean grammar Nazi, you fucking idiot?" And I knew he'd seen the error of his ways because when I refreshed the page, the thread had been deleted. And I implore you, if you see anyone spreading these dangerous lies on social media, challenge them, because they never have any credible science to back them up. At best, there'll be a sensationalist headline linked to some clickbait. But whereas most of us would actually read the article, these people just post the headlines because it fits their paranoid, deluded narrative. And if you see someone ranting away with their caps lock on, treat them as if they're trying to kill you. Because as we hit the second wave of this pandemic, for people with a compromised immune system, that's what could happen. Just look at these beautiful autumnal colours. Although if you ever meet someone who says that autumn or fall is their favourite season, there's a good chance they're an absolute twat. Thanks for watching.